All right, so let's start out by talking about Cam, who at this point, Titans continue to say they're still finalizing all those things. You can't announce the number one pick early. But I would be very, very surprised if he's not the number one pick to Tennessee. If indeed that is the case, what do you think the Titans are getting, knowing Cam as well as you do? And what do you think about the fit there in Tennessee?
I think it's a good fit, a special player. Man, he's been able to, go and beat him at 3 different stops. Of course, college is completely different from the NFL. But, he's been able to go and beat him and make plays and make teams better, getting the opportunity to go to UIW and turning that program around, especially, what he did that first year in the COVID year, and then going to Wazoo and breaking all those records and putting all those them numbers, and then going back to the U and bringing them back to relevance. So, just being able to do that, and as you can see, doing it with different guys. It didn't matter, if he had a whole bunch of 5 stars around him or 0 stars like he was still making everybody better. So he's a guy who's going to come in and make the team better, and a guy who wins football games, a special talent, being able to – he's the modern day quarterback. All of the, different arm angles and all the stuff that he can do it makes him special. So Tennessee, if they end up going with Cam, they're going to get a special guy.
So 4.5 years ago, you start working with Cam. What was he like then? What were your first impressions, and what's allowed him to grow from being a guy who, even if he came out a year ago, would have been maybe a mid-round pick to now, quite possibly being number one?
Man, and I think this kind of answers both questions. If you ask him, literally till this day, if he would have went with his first mind and came out last year, he felt he was a first-round draft pick. He feels that. He still feels that to this day. We had a conversation the other day, and he was like, shoot, I would at least win 10. So that's just who he is. He has the confidence in himself. And that's what I saw the first day that, we were out here. I'm at the facility right now. We were out here training. That's the first thing I saw from him, just the confidence and the belief that he has in himself. Man, when we first worked out with each other, it was kind of seeing all the different arm angles that he throws from, ball dropping a little low at the time. It's just a lot of different things. And I went into it. When we got done, I was like, man, all right, cool. We probably going to have to change some of this stuff. But I was like, man, let me go watch his film again. And then I went to go watch his film, and I was like, okay, this is what makes him who he is. Being able to throw from all these arm slots, all the off platform. That's what made him very special at the time when he was at UIW. So I'm like, man, we're not going to change any of this stuff. We're going to, find ways to make it better and hone in on it and perfect it and go from there. And I think that's what really helped us create our bond, because I feel like a lot of guys, that he might have worked with, wanted to, him to be this pro-style guy and do it the way that everybody else has done it. But, man, it was big for him, for me to just come out and, see what he wanted to do and perfect that stuff and not change who he was and not change what made him special.
As you're describing the skill set, and as you said, Darrell, this is the modern day quarterback. I'm like trying in my mind's eye to envision who is the closest comp in the NFL. When you talk about switching all the arm angles, body type a little bit too, like Mahomes is the number one, even though it's blasphemy to compare anybody to Mahomes. Like, who's the comp for Cam Ward in your mind?
Man, when he went into Miami last year, I did an interview with one of the Miami people, I think on 3, and told him, he asked me about a comparison. I was like, I'm not saying that this kid is Patrick Mahomes, but the play style is Patrick Mahomes. How they, like you said, how they look, the build, but just all the different arm angles, all the off-platform stuff that Pat does, Cam does. The baseball background that Cam has, Patrick Mahomes has. So all the different things, and he watches Patrick Mahomes. So he sees that, okay. And that's what I think gave him, a lot of confidence as well, seeing Pat go into the NFL and not change who he was and consistently, throw at all the different arm angles, do all the different things that he did that's making him successful. And he like, okay, shoot, I do the same stuff, So that's my comparison. Of course, Caleb Williams does a lot of that stuff as well, but my comparison would be Patrick Mahomes. And I'm not saying he's Patrick Mahomes, but his play style is very close, very close.
Well, I remember too, way back when Mahomes came out, which was 2017, and I was talking to Davis Webb, who had known and played in the same system at Texas Tech, and he was like, the one kid in your neighborhood who can just do it. You go out on the playground, you go in the backyard, and you just do it. That's Pat. And I had a coach tell me something very similar about Cam, which is, you mentioned the baseball background. He played multiple different sports. When you get him, Shedeur, and yourself as a former college quarterback too, are there competitive moments between that group, even non-football stuff that you guys do?
Man, everything, literally everything gets competitive. It's like if it's weight room stuff, if it's conditioning, if it's, of course, the throwing stuff, if it's we got a basketball hoop out here. Of course, you know, he tells everybody if he wasn't playing football, he'd be going pro in basketball. That's how he feels. But he does come from a basketball family, so I can understand that. But literally everything is competitive. If it's, you know, if it's playing a video game, Madden, whatever it is, like everything is competitive. Like that's just the nature. If it's, you know, we leaving here and headed, like the other day, leaving here and headed to the PT place, you know, all right, I'm gonna get there. They say I'm gonna get there in 15 minutes. I'll be there in 14 minutes. You know, like just little things. Everything is competitive. That's just who he is, and that's just his mindset. That's just the type of guy he is. Like literally anything you can think of. If it's fishing, if it's whatever it is, he's a competitive guy. That's just who he is.
Catch the Rich Eisen Show live weekdays from 12 to 3 p.m. Eastern on Roku Sports Channel in the U.S.